Okay, so what are all these controls? How do these all work? Let me say what they are and point them out on this big display that I have first. And then you can reference this later as I say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and click on the on-screen adjustment tool. And you're like, what? Which one was that? It's so small I can't see it. Don't worry, I'll show you where they all are. So first off, once you bring up the properties for the curves, and just to show you what that actually looks like on this screenshot of the curves, I'm going to go ahead and click and tell it curves. Bird. My bird is saying hello. So on the property of the curves, you have all these controls. So this is the on-screen adjustment tool. That's this one right here. That allows you to do adjustments by clicking on the image itself. I'll show you that in a minute. This is your preset bar. And one right here. It has all of your presets. You can create your own presets as well. This is the flyout menu for the properties. In this case, it'll be the curve properties. And if you click it, it's getting a little cut off. It's flying a bit off my screen. But this should be auto select parameters, auto select targeted adjustment tool, save curves preset, load curves preset, delete current preset, curves display options, show clipping for black, white points, auto options, reset curves, close tab. So that's what's in the flyout menu. It's over here. This is your channel selection, and that's the channel that you're working on. You can have the composite, and since as always, we are in a, if you go to image mode, we are in an 8-bit RGB. We have the RGB composite, we have the red, the green, and the blue. So that's what's in this bar. The auto option, pressing the auto option will do an auto curves adjustment, but the details of what that means is stashed under the flyout menu in the auto select parameter, in the auto options. There we go, in the auto options, and it has this menu here. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. You have the, underneath the on-screen adjustment tool, you have the black point eye picker, which is the black eyedropper it's frequently referred to, the color caster, which is frequently referred to as the gray eyedropper, and the white point picker, which is the white eyedropper. You have the standard curves point tool, and this allows you to edit or modify points. So if you look over on the right for just a second, it's the one that lets you click and make points and swing stuff around all crazy like. You have the pencil tool. It's the one that looks like a pencil that allows you to draw straight on it and do all that crazy stuff that people think curves normally does do, and rarely does it actually do that. Once you have the pencil tool selected, you can click on the smooth tool. This is only available if you have the pencil tool. If you have the standard tool, you can't get to it. And as you notice, it's the standard point tool, so it's grayed out. Sometimes you'll get this icon, and that's one of the reasons I took a screenshot rather than just have it up. This means that the cached memory, in other words, what loaded in at the time that this was generated, this levels, this histogram in the back, is stored, and it may be out of date. Clicking this will refresh it. So it keeps track and goes, hey, that might be different. We need some help here. You have your input, and again, that's the bottom bar. And you have the output, which again is the value of the left bar. You have the black point, and you have the white point. You have the standard sort of stuff that you get on a lot of your adjustment layers, such as the clipping mask, which will clip down to the layer below it. The preview undo, if I remember correctly. So clicking let me get this up, press to view the previous state. So if you click and hold, it will show you what the previous state was. This is your undo option, which will reset, right here, will reset to the previous storage. And this gets a little complicated. Let's say that we did some adjustments. So voila, it's like, looks like an old Macintosh computer before they had color. If we click the reset now, it will reset to the original stage, and that's it. But if you were to do some adjustments and then click off of the adjustment layer, so like this background layer, and come back to it and do additional adjustments, something strange happens. We should get now a previous reset, which is the weird one we had before, and then the original one. So it will store in its little memory one step. So if you decide to do some little adjustments to the curve, if you're happy with your curve, you go off of it. And then if you want to tweak it a little bit, come back. And now that undo, when you do a second step, that undo will store it. And you can see that by clicking on the view previous stage. This is whatever's stored in there, this view eyeball with the little undo arrow. That will show you what will happen if you were to click on the reset. So if I click the reset, sure enough, that's what we got. Clicking it a second time, notice we no longer, on the right here, we no longer have that eyeball preview. That means clicking it a second time will bring it back to the default. And that's really the only indicator that you have, is this little eyeball guy of what it was before. And that's kind of bad too, because it's not even an indicator anymore. A few versions back, they actually had this symbol here, this undo symbol change. And I can't remember where in the Creative Cloud they ditched it, but it used to be that the bar icon on the bottom, if I remember correctly, the bar icon on the bottom didn't exist until you had 2 steps of undo. So watch out for that. Basically, if you want to kind of temporarily store stuff, you can click off and then click back onto your adjustment layer properties. And then lastly, we have the eyeball. That is your layer visibility. Same thing as toggling this on and off. That's the eyeball. So let me demonstrate. Let's say we washed everything out. Eyeball off, eyeball on. Notice that on the layers, it's the same thing. These two are connected. And last but not least, certainly, we have the trash can icon. Clicking the trash can icon will delete the adjustment layer, and we'll ask you, are you sure you want to delete the layer, curves 1? I'm going to say yes. And that gets rid of it. So that's what those tools do. But there's still more. So by default, I'm going to come back to our wild horses here and open up the black-white adjustment icon on the layers palette and tell it curves. How we view this in the center is determined by settings that are stashed inside of your flyout menu. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video now that you know what these on-screen buttons do to an extent. There's more. And then we'll come back to it. We'll get into what, sorry, I didn't really say what they do, what they're all called. Well, we're going to go ahead and adjust our visual here, our little visual window here, and then we'll get into what each of these buttons do now that we know what they're called. And I will see you in the next video where we'll set up this thing.